Well, the shockwaves from the sacking of Chief Government Whip Philip Ruddock continue to reverberate around coalition ranks today. Many were aghast that the longest-serving member of the House of Representatives, the former Immigration Minister and Attorney-General and father of the House, would be treated in such a manner. Queensland Liberal Andrew Laming describing it as a scapegoating of a Godzilla-like proportions. On Friday, before news broke, I organised to interview Mr Ruddock today about the fate of Andrew Chan and Maran Sukumaran, something, as a member of Amnesty International, he has spoken passionately on. To his credit, Mr Abbott has kept his appointment and he joins me now in the studio. Philip Ruddock, welcome.
I love the proverbial mistake.
What, the proverbial?
You called me Mr Abbott.
Oh, did I? Oh, my goodness. Freudian slip. There we go. Now,
it's a good start.
It's a good start. Oh, dear. Well, would you like to be called Mr Abbott should the situation arise?
I have no problem at all.
Look, on a serious note, two Australians facing execution. It's obviously an issue you come here to speak about. But if I could first talk to you about the decision to replace you. Can we clear things up? Have you been sacked?
What I've said was very clear. The position I held was in the gift of the leader, and any matters relating to that, you should speak to him.
Well,
the script won't change.
Well, the Prime Minister, has said to Channel 10 today that he had to replace you because he wasn't getting proper feedback from backbenchers. Were you yourself surprised by the level of unhappiness? Were you reporting back to the Prime Minister?
I'm not going to canvass matters relating to that, other than to say my expectation is if the Prime Minister had concerns about the way in which I undertook the task, he would put them to me.
Do you understand that there is a lot of support for you, given that many people feel as though you have been treated unfairly? Do you see this decision as any kind of retribution? Are you a scapegoat?
Well, the answer simply is no. And as I said, the position I held is one that the leader chooses, and I have no complaint about that.
The leader says that he had to make this decision because he needed deeper engagement with the backbench. Was that not able to take place with you in the role?
It's his decision.
Not a lot is known for many Australians about this position as Chief Whip. Did you see it as part of your role to perhaps go to the Prime Minister's defence, to rally those that might have been a little unhappy?
I spoke to the media quite frequently, and I spoke on your program last week, and I took the view that I should lead by example because, in my judgment, the party is not well served by these issues being the subject of a lot of public comment. So to be a barracker rather than refusing to comment was, in my view, not the appropriate way forward. The Prime Minister had my support. I did what I believe was the appropriate role, and I don't intend to comment further. I don't think it's helpful. The position I held is the Prime Minister's choice, and if he had any concerns, I would expect him to raise them with me.
Has he done so?
I would expect him to raise them with me.
You have to admit, though, on the surface of it, it looks bad that you've been replaced by two backbench MPs who had been quite vocally in support of the Prime Minister and trying to dissuade several of your colleagues against this bill motion.
I don't think it's helpful for me to continue discussing the matter.
Is the Prime Minister the best person to lead the government at the moment?
Prime Minister is the party's choice, and I strongly support the party's choice. I'm here to talk to you about a matter that I think is far more significant, and that is the death penalty. And I don't want to walk away from that, and I don't want to lose the time to talk about it.
I appreciate that, and as I said to you, I am keen to speak with you about that. I know you've been an advocate, but you have to understand that this is a matter that has a lot of Australians worried about how you have been treated, and many feeling as though that it has been in an unfair manner, and in a manner that is in which you've been penalised for doing your job.
The choice is the Prime Minister's.
There's some talk that you might be offered, that the Prime Minister might offer you another role. Have you accepted or have you been given any offers?
I've got nothing to say about matters of that type.
If the polls show in 6 months' time, if the polls continue to go as they have, is the Prime Minister still the right person for that job, or should perhaps the party be looking elsewhere?
The Prime Minister has the support of the Parliamentary Party, and he wants to be given the opportunity to demonstrate that he is the right person for the job, and I'm going to give him every chance.
So does that mean that the party has a lack of stronger alternatives? So what about Malcolm Turnbull? Could he...
Look, that is distinctly unhelpful. I think there are far more important issues before us.
No, I recognise that, but obviously for those in the Liberal Party, there are answers that have to be, I guess...
I don't think it was a matter that ought to be the subject of commentary. We have a broader task, and I'm there to act in the national interest, and I'm not there to play games. I came to you
But how
today.
is it acting in the natural,
Well, no,
in the national interest
in
to
the-
put someone with your level of experience out of that role?
No, it is in the national interest that when very important matters face citizens of Australia, that we are seen to be doing everything we can for them, and that's what I want to talk to you about.
I know you agreed to do this interview before, I think it was about half an hour before news of your sacking broke. Are you worried that even by being here, that could fuel the speculation further?
I wouldn't be if you allowed me to address the matters we're going to talk about.
All right. Look, I wouldn't be doing my job, Mr. Ruddock, you know, if I didn't ask you those questions. It's obviously...
Well, I wouldn't be doing my job if I tried to respond to them all.
What about Julie Bishop? What are MPs saying to you about her? Are they in support of her? Does she have a lot of groundswell of support?
Well, I thought Julie Bishop was absolutely tremendous when she moved the motion to the Parliament on the question of Sukumaran and Chan. And I think the Parliament was at its very best when we had the support of the Deputy Leader of the Opposition and the Shadow Foreign Minister. I think the Parliament was at its best when parliamentarians across the political spectrum were writing to the Indonesian ambassador about this event, which could be only days away. And I have very strong views that we here in Australia should not only be advocating on behalf of Sukumaran and Chan, but that we should be pursuing very strongly our principled opposition to the death penalty abroad. And I've taken the view, and I think you're aware of this, that there is a role for Australians to play in not just advocating on behalf of our own, but getting countries that we know in a very positive way, and others that we don't necessarily relate to as strongly. I mean, people don't often realise that the death penalty is significant in Saudi Arabia, one of our friends. The death penalty is significant in the United States. Large numbers of people are executed in China, in Iran. And for me, I've endeavoured to raise with the Indonesians that we should have a unity ticket in opposition to executions, because Indonesia frequently seeks to have its own people freed of the prospect of execution.
You were the Attorney General back in 2005 when the Bali Nine were arrested. Should the Australian Federal Police have tipped off Indonesian officials, given that there is the death penalty for that kind of crime in Indonesia?
Well, there was a judicial review by Justice Finn as to what happened, and I'll leave it at that. I had no responsibility as the Attorney General for the way in which the AFP undertook their responsibilities. They're an independent statutory body, and the police should not be the subject of political direction in relation to the matters that they pursue and how they conduct their investigations. And people would be horrified, quite frankly, if the way in which this issue unfolded, there was an argument that the police should be under political direction. They're not. But I think it is a significant factor that Sukumaran and Chan were involved in drug running to Australia. And the adverse impact was not prospectively to Indonesians, but to Australians.
Did you advocate for them, though, at the time when you had that high position of power and authority in the country?
I have continued to advocate against the death penalty and the whole of my political career. I was very strongly supportive of Scott Rush when we sought to have him and the death penalty imposed upon him removed. I have been an advocate in relation to other Australians who have been on death row, and I will continue to be an advocate. I think there is a very positive role that we can play. When I was in Indonesia not so long ago, meeting with Commission 1, which is the equivalent of their Foreign Affairs Committee, I took the opportunity to raise the fact that there were hundreds of Indonesians sentenced to death around the world. And I said, we ought to get together and work to change the policies that leave them exposed in that way. We should have a, how can we work with you, I said to the Indonesians, to try and support your people who are on death row. And maybe they saw that as a ploy to advocate on behalf of the Australians. But I think we should have a principled opposition to the use of executions around the world.
Philip Ruddock, Father of the House, thank you so much for your time here.
Pleasure.
Quick look at the weather now.